Welcome to the Savvy Luminary podcast, Astrology for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, creator of the Astrobrand Method, business astrologer, brand designer, author, and Aquarius boss woman. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers like you illuminate and amplify your unique star powers so you can be the luminary you were born to be. I am beyond excited. I am here with this beautiful soul, Colette Baron-Reid. She almost needs no introduction. Everybody knows you as an internationally acclaimed oracle expert, but and a little Pomeranian. Well, you know my spirit animal is a Pomeranian too.
Yes.
Cheeky. But you may know her as like just this amazing online personality and the creator of many decks. And I know her as just a guide and a mentor who has graciously and generously offered so much of her wisdom to me. So thank you, Colette, for being here.
I wouldn't miss this for the world. And for any of you that may be wondering about whether you should book a session with Leslie, I have booked many sessions with Leslie, and she is like no one else on the planet. I will do anything for her. She is so good at what she does. And I'm telling you, I was so impressed, and I've seen it all in the 30 years plus I've been doing this work. She's the real deal and can honestly and genuinely help any one of you if you are ready to start a business. And I have one already. It was so profound. I cannot promote her enough. Okay. So that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you so much, Colette. There's so many, when I always ask people when they come into, it's a pretty big investment to have an Astrobrand reading with me. And I'm always surprised whenever I'm like, so how do I know you? How did we get connected? They're like, oh, Colette's Spirit Jam. Oh, Colette's mentorship. Oh, I'm just like, thank you, Colette.
Well, I'll tell you something. First of all, I believe that we get where we go together. It takes a village. Right. And I feel when you have a gift, yours is very specific, which I understand because I only got really successful when I got super specific, which we can talk about later. And you are so specific and your abilities are so spot on. There's no fanciness to it. You are straightforward. You see it. You're able to see things from a lens. I was trying to tell another astrologer friend of mine about you for you to do a reading for her because she doesn't know how to do what you do. And I'm like, but here's the deal. Like, this is your genius. Your zone of genius is to be able to see the blueprint of someone's destiny and look at it from an entrepreneurial lens. But even still, I looked back at my reading with you and thought to myself, isn't this interesting? Because this really tells me more than just my business. This tells me about who I'm to serve in the world to the best of my ability anyway. Do you know what I mean? Even if I didn't have a business, there are certain people that in certain ways I'm meant to be here in this world. And you are so eloquent about it. Like, I've looked back at my notes so many times. So I get, you guys, this is a big investment. I totally understand it. You are, and you have, listen, you're a median. You're not that expensive, to be honest. You're in the middle.
Okay, good.
You're like the middle, like you really are. Your rates are right in the middle where it should be, but you are worth every penny. You even gave me more than I wanted to pay you more because you gave me all this extra stuff. And I'm like, is this still part of the same thing? I'm telling you, if anybody wants to really get who you were born to serve, not just, this isn't just like, oh, I think it's this, it's you were born for this. It's so extraordinary. I'm still amazed. Anyway. Enough about you.
Well, I know, enough about me. I'm like just like absorbing and glowing in all of your love. So thank you. This is about you, though. And yes. I mean, you can hear how, Colette, you are so generous and loving and caring, and you've gone so far in that world, but you're not here to just like kind of keep it all. You're here to like share it back in the world and like inspire others to learn their specific, unique gifts.
Absolutely. I don't believe in the scarcity model. Mm-hmm. I do not believe that there's only so many pieces of the pie. Yeah. Like, I believe that even when you look at oracle decks, they've become very popular lately. Mm-hmm. There's so many goddess decks. There's so many spirit animal decks. There's so many decks on, Lemuria, Atlantis, like the ancients, the new ones, the modern, the tarot. Like there's room for everyone. And so there's room for everyone. And I really feel that the more skilled people that there are to share, right? The more of us rise together. We rise together. This is gone are the days of the guru where they're at the pinnacle and hoarding it. That's not what this is about. And that's a patriarchal perspective that's really baked into our culture. That's changing. We're in this like brand new phase of our lives as parts of it are being destroyed, while we still have to have the imagination to build something new.
Yeah. That's really interesting that you bring up, because that's one of the themes that I see in so many of my clients' charts. And even with your chart, because you are a Libra rising, it's like, how are you a leader? Like, how do you capture everything and package everything? Well, you do it through that Libra lens of relationships, of partnerships. You're not here to just do it all on your own. And I'm finding that this is the rise of kind of that reciprocal
collaboration,
circular collaborative leadership.
The circuitous, also about the circle, exactly, like having that circle. And it doesn't mean to be completely without some form of hierarchy, because when I say hierarchy, I'm meaning in a way that's healthy. I have 30 years of experience. I have something to offer.
You do.
But that doesn't mean that my knowledge is better than some of the cool, interesting, maverick ideas and pioneering ideas of the younger audience, or not audience, or the younger practitioners that are coming up. It just means I'm here as a mentor. I'm going to show you what I know, and I'm going to spotlight you because I can, because it's what we should be doing.
Yeah. Well, and for you, it goes beyond the should. It's like you are so loving and generous. Like you want to. Your Cancer sun at the 10th house. It's so bright.
I'm a party person. I write music with a guy in Sweden. So I'm not sure if anybody knows of your audience that I used to be a recording artist. And when I got my record deal, I look really young. I'm going to be 63. But when I was 40, I got my record deal and they thought I was in my 20s. As soon as they found out that I was 40, the story became about that the record company was paying attention to a mature artist, because it was very sexist and ageist. Right, in the music business, music industry sucks like a big one. So now, 23 years later, I got back together with my producer, my original producer and writing partner, Eric Ross, who everybody knows as Tori Amos's producer, writer. If people like that kind of music, I don't sound like any way that I speak at all. And the whole idea of being too old is ridiculous. But Libra rising is also about beauty, and it's about art. So I called my old partner and said, I want to listen, I'm old, so is he. I'm like, why don't we try it again? Because we don't have any attachment now. Let's just do it. And I'm partnering. And we've written the best music of our careers. It's like, what just happened? But it's about partners.
And it's so interesting about the music industry, about this kind of focus on like youth and everything new. We're changing that because there's so many professions that we get better with age, like musicians, spiritual entrepreneurs, designers, as we gather experience, as we learn things. And so for those of us listening who are thinking, oh, I'm too old to start new, or I'm too this or too that is just such baloney that the system feeds us.
I know. And we have to decondition ourselves. I think that's really what's going on right now globally, is the opportunity to recognize and face our conditioning, the shadow of all of that. And it depends on who we are in the spectrum as to how it's going to impact us, right? But we got to work in partnership to heal this. We have to do it together. We can't just do one person does it and the other person doesn't, but we have different parts to play. But I think that you mentioned something about the spiritual entrepreneurship. Like, people want to step into the woo. You're going to be on my podcast. It's going to be called Inside the Woo. It's coming in the fall.
I love it.
Totally, you want to be my guest. But anyway, so in our kind of out of the spiritual closet, a lot of people that are in transition are older. They're in their 40s and up, right?
Yeah.
And you even said for yourself, like you chose this direction a little later on, right? It wasn't in your 20s. And I believe our value, our currency is our experience. So it's like a fine wine. It ages. That doesn't mean to say that a young person's experience doesn't count. Of course it does. It's just that, you know, you're never too old because you're not stepping in something new. You have a wealth of experience to share. And you just need to understand how to tap that. And you show us with the astrology chart, really basically where our zone of genius lies.
Yeah, how to reframe it and refocus it.
Well, you're brilliant.
You said something really interesting, and I read this about you also about, you know, getting your record deal when you were in your early 40s. That's right.
Yes.
And there's an astrological aspect that happens in our early 40s, the Uranus opposite Uranus. It happens anywhere between 38 and 42 for all of us that reach there. It happens. And this is kind of like this shock in your life because Uranus is that energy of revolutionary and where we actually become our better selves after this place.
Now?
You're on a constant evolution. All of your 0 degrees of your angles. I'm looking at, of course, I have your chart. It's like every time anything changes, like Jupiter going into Pisces, 0 degrees, like your whole chart just goes bring. Something changes.
Well, yeah, and boy, oh boy, I've had some serious changes in the past few years, but they're good though. Like I always said, you know, when Pluto's coming, I've got to destroy something in my life to make it better. And the transformation has been important. And I said before I met you, I said to one of my astrologer friends, I said, you know, I'm going to make Pluto my boyfriend. Yes. I am going to look at the hard stuff and change it. And it's still happening. But this whole thing about the Uranus in my early 40s, I finally surrendered to my dysfunctional choices in relationships and met my husband. I saw my music really prove to myself that I could do it, but I left it in order to do this because I was called to this. I'm still called to music, but it was not meant to be my career. This was. So this narrowing down of what is really true for me and really calling me as my service is now gifting me back my music.
I want to talk about this specificity, how you decided, because I don't know if you know this about me, but we have a very, very similar path because I've been a lifelong musician. I'm still a musician.
I know you are. It's so cool.
But a very different type of musician. It's very niche again, my nicheness. But then also at 41 is when I got married. I got rid of all of my dysfunctional relationships. I married. I had a child. Like everything in my life happened at 41. Before then, it was just like mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake.
Too. I mean, the only thing I didn't mistake, it's funny because I was doing readings, like I've been doing readings, or I've been in this business, even though I thought I was only doing it as a day job while I was waiting for my music career to take off, which is why I think I did so well because I had no attachment to it. At all. I was like, I don't really do this. I'm really a singer. Don't come back next year. Like, I'm not that, right? I'm the other thing, right? And I'm that. And then it was like all the people were lining up at the door for readings. I'm like, oh, it was too easy, right? I was like, oh, this is so easy. Why should I be doing this? This music is so hard. I should do that. But yeah, it was a very interesting thing, but I got clean and sober at my Saturn return, my first one when I was 27.
Okay.
And I almost died. So I really believe I got a second chance at life. And when it was so obvious to me, because I had no plans to get a book deal, like Hay House just plucked me out of obscurity.
Wow.
Was I? Yes, I had I got written up in W magazine because some of my Shishi Fafa clients out of New York, like they all knew everybody. I was reading everybody who was anybody and whatever you call that. And then I was reading some of the people connected to the royals in London. So before I met my husband, I was planning to leave, Canada and moved to England. So to do readings, and because I had the most amazing clients there. So I thought, you know what, I'm unhappy here. I'm going to take my little dog and go. And so W Magazine did an article when I was there. So I was written up in the London Times and all that stuff too. And what was very interesting, somehow I got connected to this other woman who was working in England for, the chef Jamie Oliver. They had
yes.
Right? They had a brand management company. So they came to me and said, we want to manage you. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to be doing.
Wow.
But and then they said, we're going to get you a book deal. And I'm like, ah. And then so shortly, it was beautiful what they did. And then Hay House UK, it was so funny because 3 publishers bid on my book. The worst deal was Hay House.
Oh.
Yep. The worst deal was Hay House. But I didn't have hardly any money.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what possessed me, but something came over me and said, I have to go there. And I'm like, okay. And then I went there, cried my eyes out in Reed Tracy's office. Right. And, I'm like, when he said, you're going to have to be on stage, I'm like, you mean people have said, anyway, I went, and the rest is history. And at that time, my second album had come out, and I was like, I kept imagining and visualizing myself selling my music from the stage. So what happened was Hay House bought all my music and sold it from the stage. And I was on a 110 city speaking tour with somebody I said for sure I would never work with, which was Sylvia Browne, because she scared me.
Uh-huh.
I was like, I can't work with her. Oh my God, I'm afraid of her. And then I went on tour with her. And she was so funny. Oh my God. And I cut my teeth on the stage for 110 cities. I went on tour with Sylvia Browne. It was like a circus. She had 7,000 people in the audience and listening to my music. And I'm like holding the microphone in my hand, realizing like, oh my God, this is my service. It's not to me sing on stage. They're listening to my music there, but I'm doing readings. I'm talking about my life story. I'm talking about being an addict. I'm talking about, the deepest layers of connecting to spirit. And it hit me. And one day, I just realized I had to give up the music altogether. It wasn't there was no career there for me. And I just turned and walked. It wasn't good for me anyway. I was clean and sober, and I'd have to sing at 11 o'clock at night in a bar. I go to bed at 9.
Good for you. So that's like so amazing. It's like you were like, there was this perfect storm of like, okay, well, you're coming into your early 40s, then you happen to be at the right place at the right time, and all of these opportunities opened up for you. But then it was because of your experience and those wounds that you experienced as a youngster that you shared vulnerably and brought you to that place that everything just opened up. Like that just feels so amazing to me.
And I thought it was going to come from me writing songs, because I write my own music, right? So I thought that's where I was going to pour my heart out. I thought that's how, because music healed me in so many ways. And I had changed, and I felt like it gave me hope, and I wanted to give other people hope. And I thought it would somehow make me less wounded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think in a way, I wanted adoration from people rather than serving the people. There's all that Leo in my chart, like pick me.
Yeah. Right? Well, it's not even a want of adoration. It's a need for adoration.
Thank God I'm a little older now. I don't care. That does go. No, but I was also born to be on stage, and I knew that. But I also realized that can also be a bypass for the really deep work. When you're having people tell you how great you are all the time, and how, oh my God, like that's, you don't have to do the work. You're not feeling like, do you know what I'm saying? Because if you're constantly looking for the outside to approve of you, it's, I don't know how to put it. It was just, I also knew, because I was working a 12-step program, I've been in AA for 35 years. And I was in therapy, and I realized I had so much work to do. And that if I was looking for the outside to approve of me, and got the approval like you do, or the not approval like you also do in the music business. Like everything external to me, it couldn't be about that anymore because I knew I would drink.
That just to kind of like hold space, like you're sensitive, all your Cancer energy is so sensitive. Well, one of the things that I notice about just like really powerful people, it's like we don't hear the backstory, because it's like with like powerful people like yourself, who we're seeing only the highlights, right? We're not seeing the lowlights. And the pendulum has to swing in both ways. And so the people who are successful like you, who have risen above it, have learned how to take their ultra deep lows and turn them to help them get higher, that kind of root to rise aspect. So there's no powerful person out there that hasn't suffered as much as they have succeeded. And to know that when you're thinking about your own business, for all of our listeners here who are thinking, oh, well, when will I make it? And it's like, well, when are you going to face your hurts?
Yes. And as well to face your accountability for how your hurts can impact other people, or your ignorance too, because I think I think it's really important to acknowledge and note that in our spiritual entrepreneurial world, especially around art, etc., I had to face my responsibilities, etc., around cultural appropriation, about doing, like really understanding how I can respect and how I could change things, and how what I was actually participating in that was causing harm. So that was a real turnaround for me too, because that wasn't that long ago. That's been 3 years that I've been really deep in this work. And so I think that, you know, being accountable for everything, like I got accountable for my wounds, then I had to get accountable for my impact and my influence, right? My impact and influence. So and that was another layer that brought up a lot of stuff. So, and I've been excited because for me, it was like, okay, let's dive into, and it's going to be a lifetime thing. Some of the things that occurred as a result of some of my wounds, because I don't think I'm the only one. And that's why I like to share them. And I also think I'm not the only one that's been having to face a lot of things in the past 3 years, or specifically in the past year and a half, right?
All the accountability. But, you know, the part of the accountability, and especially in the last 3 years, if I may interrupt a little bit, is that we didn't have awareness.
Right. Once you have awareness, then I know. That's why I'm not apologetic. I honestly am not one of these like, oh my God, I've done some. I'm like, more for me, it's like, wow, was I ever sleeping? Right. Or like, holy crap. And now I still say I'm about as awake as 3 eyelashes open. Like I'm always learning. And I don't ever pretend to be more awake than I am from one day to the next, because I really do think it's like a whole lifetime of learning something different. However, and important, but I want to talk in a more general term too. So I know for a fact that a lot of my own personal insecurities came from a lot of my really core wounds. So I lost the ability to protect myself. And I had already had trouble with drugs and alcohol and an eating disorder when I was 14. So I had this ability to feel things from people and see things that, you know, for other people weren't there, but I could see them quite clearly. Thank you very much. I was a little kid. So I've always been a little unstable. If you were to, I probably, had there been a diagnosis when I was young, I would have been diagnosed with ADHD or somewhere on the spectrum. Like I'm positive I sit there somewhere. Just because I've struggled with mental health. So after that, and I became a really serious drug addict after that, you know, and then I hit bottom, and then I got clean and sober when I was 27, but having not any construct, because my mother was also a Holocaust survivor. Okay. So
generational wounds also.
Oh, yes.
When I hear you talking about these things, like I'm looking at Chiron, I'm looking for Pisces, I'm looking for, and you know, you have like Pisces on the 6th house of health and routine. And like Pisces is so sensitive. And when we're not able to process all of of our emotions. And you're not only holding your emotions, you're holding like intergenerational emotions, that it turns to this addiction. And then I'm looking at your Chiron, which is like direct opposite of all of your Leo stellium with your moon and Mercury and Uranus, and just how it shakes things up. And like, so not only are you're trying to process the emotions, but you're trying to process your mind, you're trying to process your nervous system. And of course, as a young person who's not given the tools, turning to drugs and alcohol, like that's incredible.
And I have to say, my mom was a survivor. I mean, my mother did what she did to protect us. She absolutely 1,000% wanted the best for us. But there was a fear, and we were always told never to be ourselves, basically, never to talk about ourselves or the family. And so I understood all of that much later. I was in my 20s, because she told us at the end that the dreams, I had all these nightmares about the Holocaust. And my mother finally told me when I was 25 that, by the way, that was about the Holocaust. Like, oh my God. And so, that's why all of these recent conversations are so important to me, because I totally get it. My mom was frightened as anything to be who she was, because you could be killed for that. So then my dad, who was 50 when I was born, and he was an extraordinary man, but he was a Leo and Serbian. Okay. So he was two people. One, he was raised in the Serbian Orthodox Church, where women were second-class citizens.
So conservative.
Oh my God. And then he had this wild side to him. He was an animist. He was, he taught me how to read Turkish coffee cups. He taught me about spirit animals. He taught me that everything had a spirit. Everything was alive. Everything was, the trees and the brooks that was called double faith in the Slavic nations, where they kept their pagan roots, because Christianity only showed up in the Balkans in the 12th century. So they were pagans, right? So they were practicing animus. Like, animus is very similar. And they even said, there's a great article too, because somebody said to me, this sounds like Native American. I said, it's not. It's not for me. I never learned a thing about this from that. But there's a whole article about how closely connected the ancient Slavic belief systems, like in my heritage, they believe that we're descended from wolves.
Yes.
No kidding.
Do you see wolf card here? I pulled wolf card.
I know. I saw that, right? So that deck is actually dedicated to my dad. That deck is dedicated to my dad.
The spirit animal deck.
This is animism. This is animism exists in shamanism. It exists in indigenous cultures, but it exists in its own thing. Anyhow, so we'll go back around to the wounding, right? The idea of moving through our wounds. So I had a lot. My dad was, even though today I would love to sit down and talk to him, I was very rebellious, and he didn't know what to do with me. Right. And even though, and I take after him because he's like amazing. He was an incredible man. And then he lost everything. So I missed out on the kind of relationship that I wanted with him. By the time I hit my teens, I was a very troubled young woman. Anyhow, so fast forward when I get clean and sober, and my life has taken a huge turn when I was 27. And then very quickly, for the first 2 years of my sobriety, I did not want to know anything about hearing voices. I didn't want to see anything. Don't throw me. I had my tarot card since I was 17. I did not want to see those things. You get away from me, blah, blah, blah. And very quickly, so I got a reprieve. It was like Spirit said, okay, you're going to get sober. We're going to wait till you get your sea legs, and then we're coming for you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like, it's like you had to turn that part off of you to kind of like just really focus in on yourself. And I can see this just like represented in your chart. There's this clear signature with the Chiron in Aquarius, which is like, it's not safe to be different. Right.
Oh my God, my mom was an Aquarius. And you know what? That was her saying. You cannot be different. She made me curl my hair. Oh my God. I had to look like these little old ladies kind of thing. Like she would try to make me look like something. She put us in this waspy private school. We were, I think, probably the first ethnics in the school, but we were white. So it was different, right? It was like, but for us, we were told we weren't Canadian enough. I was told to my face, well, you're not really Canadian. I went, yes, I am. Like, yes. I go, your parents are immigrants. And my parents had heavy accents. So in this school, they were like, oh, anyhow, fast forward to coming to terms with when you have, obviously the work I do is entrepreneurial because I started as a solopreneur.
Yeah.
Right. As that's being my own person, my own practitioner. And I was only I was able to see other people's stories so clearly because I had overcome a lot of my own, but I hadn't integrated my healing. Right. That was the other thing. So I had to really make it part of me, and it took time. But I learned.
It does take time.
Yeah. But I learned early on, as long as I was committed and willing to continue to peel the onion skins and not be afraid of my shadow, then I would have a clear filter. I'd have it because you're going to go through you are going to work as in this profession, you're always going to see through the eyes or like you will see and experience the world through the filter and lens of your life experience and personality. And for however much in denial you may still be in some areas, you will see it in someone else. So you have to do your work.
Yeah, well, that's what the wolf card teaches us, right? The wolf card, the theme is knowledge to wisdom.
Yeah.
And when I was preparing for our interview today, I was like, okay, so what is this energy that we need to bring to today's episode? And it was knowledge to wisdom. So thinking about like, okay, well, we understand our wound from this intellectual level, but now how are we integrating it back in our life and offering it out? And so that's one of the lessons of Chiron, that wounded healer part. If your wound is not safe for it to be different is your wound with the Aquarius Chiron. It's like you have now integrated that into your wisdom, that you now offer it back in service.
Yeah. And I think too, I think humility is a really big piece too, right? Like, of course, and I think that what's in order for us to really participate in this new world we're trying to build, we can't pretend that we know what we don't know. Yeah. Right. And I feel like the older I got, the more willing I was to see my part in things and to stop taking responsibility for things that were not mine, but to really take a look at what I am actually responsible for, and to have more self-respect around things like that. And then therefore I can respect others better. But the humility piece is not about rigid boundaries, and it's not about rigidity. It's about being teachable. Yeah. And when you're teachable, you're not the wise person. Like there's a whole bunch of areas that we could talk about that I could say flat out, I don't have wisdom here. I just have a little bit of experience now at seeing things differently. And my accountability for me right now is to keep learning. It's like harm reduction. The behavior for me is really harm reduction and that kind of thing. Because we can't build an equitable world unless we see our part in things, right? But beyond bigger picture stuff, like just, let's say each person is an entrepreneur and they're looking at their purpose, right? Humility is also about letting go the construct that you think you have built in your head about how it should look. Because spirit knows better than you. It has a timetable. Your soul is the one with the blueprint. We can see it in astrology, but we can't really tell. So all this kind of talk about manifesting, et cetera, and I'm a big believer in all of that, but I believe the humility piece is to also say, thy will be done through me. This, and when I say this or something better now manifests for me in divine appropriate timing, it doesn't mean bigger. Yeah. A lot of times it's smaller and it's more mighty and more precious and more meaningful.
I'm gonna have to listen back to this a few more times because I feel like there's something like so much bigger and deeper there about that message about humility and the message about surrendering, and and that this idea that we're fed into, that we have to be bigger and richer and prettier and younger to be successful. And what you're
No,
saying is like that's not it. So I still have a
oh,
lot to learn.
no. Well, again, everything is in hindsight, because of course,
Yeah.
and I've made lots of mistakes too. I mean, of course I have.
Yeah.
It's like and you really grow through your mistakes. I think that your failures are the richest mulch for the garden, right? So it's like nothing is ever wasted. The vulture spirit in my deck is it's nothing is wasted ever. So I don't look at anything as a failure. In the moment of it, it feels like shit. But
Yeah.
afterwards I go, how can I do better with this in my garden? And what could I use this for in a way that can still, allow me to shine on behalf of the divine, not to shine on behalf of my ego. There's a big difference, big difference. So the bigger, better, we've all been conditioned to believe that. We live in a consumer society that says if we're not consistently expanding and getting better and more money and all these things. And I get it. There's lots of businesses out there that are teaching people how to make shitloads of money, and
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how to make your business, whatever.
It's so interesting to hear about these kinds of these failures, because in the moment that it's like so painful, right? You're like, oh, I can't believe I did this. What's wrong with me? And all this kind of self-talk that I would tell myself. I don't know if you tell that yourself those things, but then after, when we start to take a step back and really look at what you're calling the mulch, it's like, what is the learning from this? What was I supposed to experience from this that's going to kind of put me on this other path? So
yeah. And also sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes something that is so big can confront you with something. And in my case, it was ignorance. Really, it was my case. It was more like, oh my God, how could I have not known these things? And like, wow, I can see now. Like today, now I wouldn't make some of the choices that I made at that time, but. And it was funny because I had this amazing relationship to the goddess Kali. She's like, she'd show up in all these people's readings. It was weird.
Oh,
And
the destroyer, the creator.
she led me through this entire experience, and I owe everything to her. Everything. I gave this big bunch of money to the Kali Temple in Toronto. Like, I'm like, thank you for like pulling the rug out from under me so that I could become a better person and I could do better. And I could feel good about knowing that I'm part of a solution finally, instead of part of a problem. Right. And anyhow, but back to what we were saying. So, I had written books, right? I had written books. I had left Hay House for Random House because I got a lot of money to leave Hay House. That was the biggest mistake of my life.
Oh, don't follow the money.
No, I mean, I'm not telling anybody here on this podcast not to learn money. I'm not saying don't like, there's nothing wrong with making money. I have 10 full-time employees and 15 contractors. You know what I'm saying? I do really well.
Yeah.
And so I can afford to mentor people, et cetera, and whatever. That it's not about that. It's that my choice was, wow, this is powerful. This is mainstream. This is like, oh, they're letting me do a mainstream book, because I was so scared of the woo at that point, because it was my first troll experience where somebody confronted me and said I was the Satan's spawn and they were going to kill me and my family.
Oh, God.
And I was like, okay, I quit. Thank you.
That's scary.
I didn't understand that happens on the internet. And then somebody said, okay, well, you could leave Hay House and all the woo stuff and all the spiritual stuff, and you can go here. Because I have a background in Jungian psychology. I had a coaching institute already at that point, using intuitive coaching. I trademarked intuitive coach. I was really, I created all this like really interesting energy psychology process. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to just like get rid of all the spiritual stuff then. Oh, I'm going to go to work at Google. So no matter how many times I've tried to detour away for what I perceived to be safer, because I felt threatened.
Yeah.
I was threatened.
Oh no, that's a theme in your life. Yes.
Right. Everything my mother said was going to happen to me happened. So I guess what I really want your listeners to hear is that it's not a straight road. It's not a straight road. For some people it is. For me, it wasn't. I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. My world happened because I kept surrendering and I just kept being creative, and it happened this way. But then I had responsibilities. When you have a brand that starts to get a spotlight on it, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know who I was. Even then, I was scared to be me. So I went back and I was like, okay, the truth is I hate writing books. That's really the truth. What I really love is oracle cards. And I have to say, I was so grateful. I have 15 decks now.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and more coming. I took a year off, right? I took a year off. And now I'm doing a tarot deck.
This is like fascinating because just hearing your journey and all of the ups and all of the downs and how you've managed to kind of navigate that, be accountable, be responsible, because with great power, again, comes great responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
And the accountability part is like saying like, hey, I'm not perfect. And if you're expecting me to be perfect, then no. And
the other thing too is to not bullshit about it, right? Like I am not a virtue signaler. I am never going to do that. I am never going to be one of these Instagram, the woke Olympics. I am not interested in that. It's not for me, because I want to live with myself. And plus it's for my sobriety. I have to be rigorously honest about wherever I'm at the time. Right. So, and I just feel like head down, and find out really who I am and who I'm supposed to serve, and keep the doors wide open as I can for everyone that I can. But everybody is not for me, and I'm not for everybody. Right. And that was the other thing I had to understand, that not everybody's going to like me.
Yes.
You know, Libra rising, we want everybody to like
and be okay with that. Right. Yes. The Libra rising, it's like, oh, please love me. And then your Leo moon, oh, but you have to adore me. So
it's weird.
Yeah.
But well, for me, it's really that it comes from a deep anxiety that I'm so much better now, but I used to be so terrified of drama and of confrontation that I would do anything to try to make that person or situation safe. Yeah. So through what I thought was love, but I really now understand was more about keeping myself safe.
Yeah.
My mother did that. So that was also things that because we live in a world where it's like we're all walking on eggshells, you know, right now.
Cancel culture and like, am I going to be canceled today?
I don't give a shit, to be quite honest with you. I just know I'm doing all the right things. And if I do step out of line, I will fix it.
Yeah.
If I make a mistake, I'm going to fix it. And I know I'm going to fix it. And I'm going to fix it not because I want somebody not to dislike me or not to cancel me, but I'm going to fix it because it's the right thing to do, not because somebody else might say, cancel me, because if that's what's supposed to happen, that's going to happen. I just want to do the right thing. You know what I mean? And if I don't know what it is and I got to learn, well, sometimes it's embarrassing.
That's the part of awareness, right? Like we are unconsciously doing things because we're not aware. Then once we get aware, instead of feeling that shame, it's then how do we get accountable? How do we become now responsible? And so you are a beautiful example of that.
It is what it is. We are evolving, and we have to commit to the evolution.
Yeah. Well, lucky me, I only met you recently. So I get like the beautiful, all of the work that you've done. And so just completely grateful for you to share this story of, so the lessons I've learned is like focus, like have humility, surrender, like be accountable, and just like,
and don't worry about what other people are doing. Yes. I know that, you know, your podcast, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to you. And I think if I could impart some of my hard-worn wisdom, right? Because one of the things that I see people do is to fall into the one size fits all trap of here's my brand, here's how it's going to be. And what's fortunate is if they have you, that won't happen, right? Yeah. But a lot of people try to compare themselves to other people. Never compare yourself to anyone else. Never. And guess what? There's 10 more like you.
Yes.
Right?
And that's why astrology is such a great tool, because nobody has the exact same chart. So when we guide our lives to our charts, then we know we don't have to copy or compare.
Not copy or compare, but you can be in the same industry. Like, you know, I'm really close to one of my friends is launching her goddess deck. She has 3 goddess decks already. When I put my goddess deck out, I didn't like worry that she was going to be upset with me, right? You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, look at the other goddess decks out there. Mine is going to be different. And again, that was one same thing with, like I said, there's all kinds of different decks of the same genre. Like now it's like, there's so many of us doing similar things. Just do it your way.
So many decks.
Do it your way.
Do it your way. In my group, I have a Facebook group called the Savvy Luminary, the same name as this podcast. And there were so many amazing questions. So Tiana wants to know, how would you advise a spiritual person as herself working with corporate executives to connect the two? So like incorporating readings with executives in building her platform.
Okay. Tiana, is that your name? I'm giving you a big giant hug, because that's actually what I ended up doing before I retired from doing sessions. There are so many people so hungry for this, but as long as you can speak their language in a way in which you can frame this concept and give a construct that they're comfortable with, and yet add in the elements, like you'll add in the different dimensions. It's the way in which you approach this is how you're going to go about it, because you'll end up sitting there saying, are you comfortable? This is a way to open up the door. Are you comfortable? How is do you have any sense of the fact that that the consciousness is fundamental to life? I would use the language of consciousness and not call it spirit, unless the person says, I'm comfortable calling it spirit. You basically open the door to ask them their comfort level. And you might find some of your corporate clients dying to come out of the closet.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I think that as long as you have a dialogue where there's an invitation and you don't, then they're not afraid, but you language it where in such a way that they can understand it. And I always love to say consciousness is fundamental to all of life. As an animist, I believe that, but you don't have to say that, because you may not be an animist, because somebody might be a Catholic, for example. But there's a sense of looking at it, that it is within us, that it is this mystical element to life is what we need, and we're desperate for that. So if you could add that as a layer or an element to your business, I think that would be very attractive.
So this question, like there's a bunch of questions about your decks, because Lori wants to know, how do you summarize your decks and know which one to buy? And she says, for instance, when you teach wisdom of the oracle, what questions are best to work with the shaman dreams versus the mystical shaman? I want to group them together. And then, then Danuka wants to, okay, you answer that one first.
Okay, so the shaman's dream, I am not a shaman. I am a divination expert, which means I am my expertise is in understanding how to create a lexicon and calling in the consciousness of the deck, etc. Alberto Villaldo and his wife, Alberto asked me if I would help them make an oracle card deck. So the mystical shaman there are 3 of us that co-wrote the deck. I created the lexicon, and they are the shaman. They are lineage keepers. So if anybody says to you, you shouldn't be using it, they are actual lineage keepers of the Quero shaman. And they have been taught to share the lineage, right? Okay, there's that. The shaman's dream is using the concept of the shaman archetype. So it has nothing to do with shamanism, rather the fact that the shaman in all original cultures, all of them in general, represents an archetype of the one who moves and walks between worlds. And so we dream our world into being. That's Alberto's thing. So Alberto and I partnered on that. I agreed to partner with him as long as we didn't do exactly shamanism, because I'm not a shaman. Right? That didn't make sense to me, and I would have gotten in trouble anyway. So I'm not doing that.
So how do you discern which questions are best to ask each of those shaman decks?
So it's really about you can ask the same question of any deck. Any deck, which is, what do I need to know today? What do I need to know? So you should never be asking a yes or no question. I teach all of this because I believe oracle card decks are used for personal transformation. So I teach all about that in Oracle School and the Oracle School experience, as well as my Oracle Circle membership. I'm not selling it to you because I
Nope.
can't, right? So but I'm just saying that's where I teach people how to use these things. So the questions, it's really about how to ask the right question. And I'm pretty sure we have something like that for free for you to look at on my website. I'm pretty sure that's a downloadable thing that you can get. But so the shaman decks are very distinct and they're a little bit more masculine. That my teaching deck, Wisdom of the Oracle, was created specifically to have the greatest number of potential answers about subjects. So if you had a subject about prosperity, and prosperity meaning also recognizing the value of your personal currency, not always about how much money you have in the bank, right? Prosperity is a very broad term. You would ask a question and you would look up the prosperity message. If you wanted to ask about a relationship, you would look up the relationship message. You would see the protection message when the card is upside down, and you would have the essential message as well. So I made a very extensive deck so that we could be subject oriented.
Is that the Wisdom of the Oracle?
Red, yes, yeah, I teach that.
This is actually fascinating for me because like hearing how you create these oracle decks, and we talked about this a little bit before, how I had a tarot deck that was like really angry at me. So Preeti asks, how do oracle cards work? And Danuka asks, how do you curate your decks?
Oh, how do I curate my decks? To curate means bringing them together. Curating them. I'm not sure what
I think she says curate mean. Curate means like to choose, to pick and choose. And so I think in that process of creation, you're choosing like a theme. How are you curating what to create on?
Okay. So because we actually I'm going to sound like I'm advertising again, but in the Oracle experience, I teach you how to have a council of decks and work with multiple decks at the same time. So we curate them that way on a personal level. So how do I curate my decks? So they come to me, like I said, the only deck that I was asked to create was the Goddess deck, which the Reed Tracy, and actually the reason was they were going to take Doreen Virtue's deck off the market because she became a born again Christian.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and then I was like, no, I really feel called. And it really was a good experience. In the end, at the end of the day, I wouldn't change anything. But so I typically allow the deck to tell me who it is. The crystal spirits, if you saw how many crystals I have in my house, okay. So I'm a crystal addict.
Oh, beautiful.
This is one of my crystals. And I will say this, that I just believe that there's a spirit in each crystal. So crystals have always spoken to me. Yeah. So the crystal spirit deck came about by, I created a lexicon and the crystals chose themselves pretty much to be in it. And I did a lot of research on that because you want it to be in alignment with what they mean traditionally. And a lot of crystal experts don't agree on what they mean. So that was very interesting. So I was like, okay, I have 19 books. So those were the 2 decks that I did research for. But the rest of them, like the Enchanted Map, just came to me. It was like a map. It told me about places and things. And Oracle of the 7 Energies originally was going to be a chakra deck. But then as I got to understand and learn more about culture and realizing that I am not a yoga person, I am not from the yogic tradition. And so I felt to use the term chakra was inappropriate. So I also believed in, like, I learned about the 7, like different forms of 7, like the 7 notes of the C scale. And there's so many different layers.
Kabbalah.
Everything has more 7s in it. Like lucky 7s, like the 7 heavens, 7, like there were so many different 7s, Alice Bailey's 7 rays. So I then decided, you know what, this isn't appropriate for me. I'm going to change it and I'm going to actually make it more broad. And because the chakra system actually sits inside the concept of 7 energies, it's just one of many. So then I felt good about that. So that I loved that. That deck actually really did well too. And then Spirit Animal was for my dad. That was, and it was funny because I live in North America. My dad was Serbian. So there's a real blend in there of some of what he taught me based on the cards, and some of which are distinct to the Slavic way of seeing things. But because we're a global audience, I added, I wanted to make sure every continent had an animal in there or more than one, right? So that's why there's like from everywhere in the world, and nature is something we all share in common. So
some decks speak to you, some people ask you to collaborate on decks. And what I heard you say, which is one of the other questions about, you're creating this lexicon. And so that relates to this last question that I'll ask you is, how do the oracle cards work with your lexicon?
Great, perfect. So first of all, what's a lexicon? And I am going to be launching I'm giving away all my secrets in 2022. I'm going to teach people how to do this, like the way I do it. For those interested in making their own personal oracle, because we have a blueprint within us, and we can actually learn to speak to that spirit in us, like, that knows about us in a way that's uncanny. So my lexicons come from different templates that it took me 20 years to figure out. And really to kind of tool it to say, well, why doesn't this work? Because all the cards have to talk to each other, and sometimes a card doesn't want to talk to other ones. Like, I had to get rid of the kangaroo in order to make room for a grasshopper. And
those relationships, those funny relationships in the spirits.
Yeah. So lexicon, relationship of symbols and metaphors of like icebergs, where they have deep and broad, like rooted conversations that go on like this, but they all have to talk together. So that's the lexicon. So the deck then for me calls itself to me, like, I have to be honest, I literally just pray and tell me what your name is. That's basically, then I tell, hey, okay, this thing wants to happen. What do you think? Right. And here are 3 things that want to happen. And then I basically let it tell me what it is. Like, and sometimes they argue. I had in the Crystal Spirits, it's hysterical. I had Anna, who runs my school with me. I said, listen, can you help me with this deck? Because I'm having problems with some of these crystals. So she went to sleep. She goes to me, oh my God, you have argumentative crystals. I went, I know. And we both said the same 4 crystals. We're figuring out which place they should be in the deck. And I said, see, I'm not lying. I'm not making this up. Right? I said, like, this is real. She goes, oh, I can't believe this is happening. So it's like, so they kind of move themselves around, and I don't care if anybody thinks I'm crazy, but it is what happens to me. Like it really happens. And they just decide where they go and the order in which they're there. And sometimes I use numerology, and other times I just decide, no, this is the alphabet. Yeah. And I don't know how else to describe it. It has a life of its own. When I try to construct this deck from a place of intellect, it doesn't work.
Yes, I love that so much.
Not in my case. It might work for other people. I used to be pretty opinionated about decks, and now I'm like, you know what? Like, if anybody really feels called to make a deck, they're meant to make a deck. I used to think, oh, you should know who it is. You should know who making a deck. Like, oh, and now I'm like, who cares? Like, if you're called, I want people to make deck. I am going to teach people how to do this. Like, I've decided, I know how to make this come alive. I want everybody to have one.
Yeah, so, your decks are really magical. Like I was mentioning earlier, it's like I have this like tarot deck that just like hates me. Like it never offered anything useful. And I was like, okay, I got my lessons, and I just put that deck away because I was like, it was so, I don't know why. And then, but when your decks, when I ask them questions, they give me these very insightful answers. They're always on point.
I love to take credit for that, but I have to be honest with you. When I tell people I channel my decks, I don't channel some entity. Like I don't know. Oh, Seth does not come through me. Okay. But it's like I get my ego out of the way, and the wisdom that comes through me is really wisdom that's universal. And then I'm a good writer. So I'm a good songwriter. I can write oracle cards. It's my forte, and I love to do it. Yeah. But and I don't do fluffy bunny.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No fluffy bunny.
I go deep, and that's why some of my decks are not that popular, because they have a lot of depth to them, and sometimes people don't want that, and that's okay. Yeah. They're not like, oh, you'll be fine today. They're more like, understand the nature of your choices and why, and what's your motive, and like, look at that, and then see this and see, like, it's whatever. But it is the type of decks that I do are meant for personal transformation and growth. They are not meant for predictive readings. They can show you your direction, but I find that I am the best at doing prescriptive oracles, which will help you make better decisions. And your soul knows what to do anyway.
Oh my gosh. I feel very connected to that because that's how I am with astrology too. People ask me like, oh, what's going to happen in the future? And I'm like, well, don't you want to know what you need to be thinking about now?
Oh, you're very good at that too. I mean, I do like to look at my progress chart to understand what I'm up for and to see what I could plan for. But until you actually get there, no matter what a prediction tells you, until you're actually living it, you have no clue. That just sounds good.
Yeah.
So because people do like to plan in advance to know. But I always tend to let's look at what could we do to improve things, if at all, and how could we be prepared for the storm rather than be caught blindsided by it. That's the only value for me in predictive readings, because a lot of times what I saw was people would give their power to the reading, and then you're like, wait a second, and that you're going to be an armchair astronaut now. You're going to sit down and not do anything.
I love put their power in their readings. I never knew how to explain that, because that's one of the things I notice with some clients. Like they get so attached to the astrology, like, well, this is going to happen then, so I'm not going to plan anything that day. And I'm like, ooh, that, like, let's not put the power in the reading. But we could probably have a whole other conversation.
And because I do think it's valuable. I do think it's really valuable, and you're excellent at that. Everybody wants certainty. That's why they come to readings. That's why they come to psychics, intuitives, astrologers. People are they're desperate for certainty right now because we're in such dramatic changes. And people want to know they're going to be okay, they're going to be safe, or, they want to know that they're going to learn their lessons so they don't make mistakes. I mean, there's some really good value in that too. I don't think everybody's trying to bypass their work, but I understand human beings crave certainty.
Yes.
That's the way it is. But it's our responsibility around that subject of certainty to really guide people, to say, even the coaches that are listening, the spiritual entrepreneurs that are your fans that are listening to this podcast, our job is not to take away other people's work. Our job is to show them a path they could take, right? But it's always never to rescue somebody. Let people participate in their own rescue and help empower people to make better choices themselves. Because the empowered person, I always say in Oracle school, we do not fish for you and chop it up and put it on your plate and hand you a fork. We teach you how to fish. We teach you how to fish, because then you'll respect yourself more. And I do think too, that that's another reason why a lot of people project onto practitioners. Like, you didn't tell me this. You didn't say the right thing. It's not our job, right? It's right. And that you have to watch out for that too. And also for the power that we have, that we perceive that we have.
Yeah.
That's why we have to be very responsible.
So responsible and so ethical. And oh my gosh, thank you. So everybody loves you and they follow you probably already, but how can people work with you or know what you're up to right now? Like, what are you offering? Just tell us all the things.
Okay. Oh my gosh. What am I offering? Okay. Well, Oracle Palooza is coming July 31st. And if you are interested in, I am not kidding you, when we had to pivot because of COVID, we put our regular event online. We ended up with over 3,300 people from 53 countries. And we rented, and we're doing it again, rent a television studio, and we interact with you. You can, this kind of thing, these people from all over the world, we get you in breakout rooms, you meet people from all over the place. It's called Oracle Palooza. And we take you through this extraordinary weekend of really rediscovering your dreams and recommitting to them. And it's just fantastic. So that's at the end, that's the weekend. July 31st, August 1st and 2nd, I believe, or July 30th. Anyway, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's all online. You can come in your pajamas. Yeah. Oracle Palooza virtual. And you can see that on my website, ColetteBaron-Reid.com. You can follow me on the Facebook and Instagram. We are very late to the party on YouTube, but we're developing our YouTube channel. So we do readings there. We also have an inexpensive membership site for $22 a month called the Oracle's, what is it called? Oracle Circle membership, the Oracle Circle. I don't think it's open right now, but it probably again in the fall. We open our doors twice a year. Okay. And I do, Yeah. And I do spirit jams. So that means twice a month for 90 minutes. I actually do readings for people in the audience. It's like, it's amazing. It's amazing, if I may say. I do mediumship. I do business consulting. Basically, I do anything. And then we also put people on a path with their oracle cards to really get how to work with them for your good, for your highest good. And of course, we also have lunar experience, because I do everything based on lunar cycles. I have for eons. So it's the full moon, the new moon. And of course, you're going to come one day on my thing. What else? Oracle School. I have a mastermind, but I have a high level VIP mastermind that starts in September. I take 24 people for an 8-month program that's called the Dream Quest Intensive. And I think we're sold out. I'm not even sure. I always just find out who's there on the first day, but we take only 24 people, and it's very expensive. So don't even look. Oh no, maybe you can look. I shouldn't say that. I'm the worst salesperson. Can I just say, I am so bad. I'm like so bad. I'm the worst. I can't. It's like, don't come. Like,
so Oracle Palooza, Spirit Jam, your Inner Circle
membership, Oracle School Experience. That's the big one. That's what we do. That is the most amazing thing. That goes also for 8 months. Yeah. That starts in August. And that is a life-changing experience. I will tell you, whoever stays with it for the full 8 months with us, we have mentors, we have everything. It is the wildest thing. Comes out the other end a completely different person. And we have returning students pretty much every year. We have people that have come 6 times now.
That's amazing. Yeah, cool. I'll find all these links and then I'll post them on the show notes. But, follow Colette if you're not already following her on all of the grams.
And just so you know, I'm very middle of the road. So one of the things that you're going to notice about me is that I really like to be very inclusive with everybody. So you're never going to hear me talking about really super controversial things either. So I really believe that we all have to meet each other in the middle of the bridge. So that's to understand me a little bit more. If that's appealing to you, know that that's what I'm about. I will never take giant sides. I'm always trying to find where's the path of healing. Where can we meet together, and how do we hold hands under the umbrella? And for some people that can be wishy-washy, but for me, that's worked for me. Yeah. And so there's no nonsense and no drama on my pages.
Lots of fun, lots of peace, lots of beauty, lots of belonging and inclusion. Like your Cancer Sun and Libra rising doing their jobs there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a safe place. It feels very safe for people. Thank you so much for having me, Leslie. I adore you so much. And again, I cannot sing your praises enough. I will do anything for you. You are brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. You have the keenest, most curious way of working with people's soul blueprint in terms of business. I've never seen anything like it. Like I said, I could just talk about you forever. And I do.
Yeah. Thank you, Colette. This has been such an honor and such a joy. And I know my listeners are just going to love every bit of it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So thank you so much for listening to this extended conversation with Colette Baron-Reid. I had so much fun, and I hope that you did too. This is a little gift from Colette, a song that she mentioned at the beginning of the interview called What Would You Do? The music was written, performed, and produced by Colette Baron-Reid herself and her musical partner Eric Ross in their band Social Magic. Enjoy, and if you want a link, head over to the show notes where you get a link to the song.
Things will change. So maybe we could mine some kindness. We're underground, but maybe we just need reminding. Have faith in love, have faith in us. What would love do? What would love do? What would love do? What would love do? You and me, always gonna be. Remember possibilities. Oh, in this surrender. Don't give up. Still counting all the stars in the sky. Have faith in love. Have faith in us. Have faith in love. Have faith in us. What would love do?